Do the work that can't be automated and automate everything else. In this video, I'm going to show you the basics of N8N so that you can design systems instead of just doing tasks. Learn to solve the problems that you can see, and that's how you stop being dependent on other teams. Everybody is still operating on yesterday's rules. They're going to wait for the development team or somebody else to fix the obvious inefficiencies. Tools like N8N, they're going to be the new spreadsheet, the new presentation. All automation follows these simple steps: triggers, actions, and output. These are the skills that you can learn on any platform. The tools change, the thinking doesn't. Let's build this out piece by piece. Step one, let's take a look at the trigger. All you have to do is ask one question: what causes this work to begin? For example, it might be a new email arrives, a row is added to a spreadsheet, a client submits a form. If you know when the work starts, you're already thinking like a system. Let's take a look at how this looks in N8N. Let's assume that the trigger that we want to have happen is a new one deal in Pipedrive, our CRM. All we have to do in N8N is click the big plus symbol, or press tab, or click the plus symbol here. It all does the same thing. Then it already knows we need a trigger for this workflow because that's where it's starting. So all we have to do is start searching for the platform that we're looking for. In this case, it's Pipedrive, and we have on new Pipedrive event. I've already plugged in my Pipedrive credentials here, so then I can define what type of action it is. Well, we know we want it to change because a deal is changing to be a one deal, and we know we want this to be a deal. So at this stage, we can execute the step. We're going to wait for this event to happen. As soon as a one deal happens in Pipedrive, we can now see the data was passed in to our workflow. That's it. Our workflow now has a trigger, and we're set to take actions in the next step. Step two is actions. Simply ask, what do I do every single time? Some common actions would be pulling information, cleaning it, comparing it, maybe moving it from one system to another, notifying somebody else. If these steps don't require judgment, they're probably able to be automated. Let's add some of our actions to the workflow. For our actions, let's have it do a couple things in ClickUp. So we know we have a brand new client coming on. Let's go ahead and create a new folder inside of ClickUp to represent this client. So I'm going to search for folder. I've already set up my credentials for ClickUp as well inside of here. We already have it set to folder being created, and now we can go in and select the team name, and the space, we'll want to have this as client projects, and then we'll give it a name. And here we can come from any of the data over here. So we'll come right here and say, let's plug it in. We can execute this step. All right, and this is why it makes sense to test as you go along and execute each step for the action, because we can see folder name is already taken. So for this case, I'm going to go ahead and add just a timestamp here. And now we can see it's going to add a folder with this extra thing that we should never hit unless we have two things happen at the same millisecond. And let's try to run it. And now we have a folder created. Okay, but within that folder, maybe we also want a list to be created. So let's go back to our ClickUp nodes. Let's search for list. We're going to create a list. So for the folder name or ID, this is coming from the folder that we just created. And I should back up a step. Each action sends data to the next action, but every action through here can actually see data from the previous nodes. So when I click in here, I can actually see the create a folder was the previous step and the Pipedrive trigger was before that, and I can see all of that information. So since I need the folder name and we just created the folder name or the folder ID, I'm going to actually go to this create a folder, go to the ID, and I'm just going to drag this in here. And now it's going to populate the folder ID that was created automatically from the previous call. And then I'm going to give this a new name, and we are just going to call this new project. And then I'm going to try to run this step, and sure enough, executed successfully. So we could continue to add actions to this. And of course, as you're working through your workflow, you'd want to map out what every action is that you need in here. But essentially, this is it. We have our trigger, we have our set of actions. That's really all that's needed to start automating workflows. Step 3 is the output. What do I expect to see when this is done? For example, maybe it's a clean report. Maybe it's a formatted message. Maybe it's a populated spreadsheet, a notification going to the right person, a task created automatically. If there's no output, there's no value to this automation. So let's create some output in our N8N workflow. All right, and for our output, let's have this send a Slack message so that everybody on the team knows that a new client is coming on board. To wrap this up for output, we could simply search for Slack. We're going to search for message, and we're looking for send a message. I've already connected my Slack account. We know the message is sending. We're going to send the message to a user. And then in this case, I'm going to send it to myself. And the message is simply going to be, we have a new client coming on board. And then I will jump into here and go back to the original node from Pipedrive, scroll down to the title and say, let's dynamically add that in. There we go. And if I click this little button, I can see what it'll look like in Slack. This is the JavaScript that is showing what the variable is, pulling from the data. And this is what it looks like in the output. So that's it. I'm going to execute this step, make sure everything works correctly, and we're good to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and save it, but at this stage we have our trigger, we have a couple actions, and in this case the output is a Slack message notification to myself, but it could just as easily be to a channel where every account manager or project manager or specific teams have access to that to know that that happens within seconds of a deal being won. A quick note on testing. If you think about this like proofreading an email, it's going to be a lot easier. You simply run it, review the result, fix what's wrong, run it again. That's it. So let's jump in and test out our workflow. So as we think about testing, I went through and built each node out and tested it one at a time, passing data from one to the next, and sometimes referencing data back from the original node all the way to this end node. But I want to be able to test it all the way through. And the way that I can do that is click execute workflow. So now this is sitting here waiting for an event in Pipedrive. I can go over to my Pipedrive, trigger it, and there we go. We can see everything pass through correctly. Now I would want to do a bunch of different scenarios to test this, not just one deal. I would want to try it with a couple of different test deals that I would set up in Pipedrive with a bunch of different information, maybe different products, maybe different contacts. Some of the contacts have some of the information, some doesn't. So you'll want to think through how people might be using this, either yourself or somebody on the team, so that when you do test it, you can test it with a whole bunch of different situations. Now, a more advanced feature inside of N8N is evaluations, and I'll talk about that in a future video. But for right now, just remember that it is important to test, and this is just a simple workflow. We've covered all the basics that you need in N8N to continue from here. You create triggers, you connect up actions, and you end up with an output. That's all it is. It is really not any more complicated than that, other than when you design complex systems and routing and data. That's when it can get complicated. But if you start small and keep it simple, you have such an opportunity to make your life so much easier and grow your own skill set at the same time. Remember, you can learn how to do this the same way you learn anything else. It's just one piece at a time. When most people are focusing on completing tasks, you can learn to build the systems and free up your time to focus on judgment, strategy, and relationships, because that's the work that humans can do and software can't. The experience of building your own systems is also going to strengthen those non-automatable skills. Don't learn N8N to become technical. Learn it to build systems so that you're irreplaceable.